would like to discuss the working with the ego in connection with the practice of meditation as the path. We have discussed already the sense of 5 skandhas. That continual manifestation of trying to maintain oneself in the ego style. Ego, when we talk in this case, we are talking in terms of entirely different way or approach than that of the Western psychological traditions talk about ego generally. That building one's ego and developing a sense of respectability or energy. But when we talk about ego in this case, as we have gone through the process of 5 skandhas already, that we are talking in terms of that state of mind which would like to hold this particular territory, and if possible, in order to maintain one's territory, you are willing to hurt others by either destroying them or sucking them into your territory. So, simple conclusion here is we are talking about the basic style of egomaniac, which is, as we know, that particular term of egomaniac. We are talking about that type of ego that constantly trying to maintain itself, trying to hold on itself. And if there's any threat that comes along, that we begin to feel such a threat is devastating, so we fight back, or else to legitimize ourselves, that our ego might find a way that could latch up with the spirituality, that helps a great deal. So, for instance, spiritual practice is based on the destruction, or at least dissolving ego process. But realizing that, then trying to include that into the system of egohood, and trying to make it into trying to jumble it up together, so that the disciplines being practiced with territory of ego could become legitimate, or spiritual disciplines that be used. You could use them, and what you use in terms of techniques, practices, all kinds of commitment, receiving all kinds of initiations, ordinations, whatever, so that at least we don't have to surrender our ego. If you don't have to do that, it is a great thing that, for one thing, we could legitimate what we are doing in the ego's realm is being a spiritual one. transcendental practice. And more important, further things that we don't have to give our ego away, which is enormous relief. So that seems to be the usual spiritual materialistic approach, is that latch ourselves into a certain particular discipline and commit ourselves as far as you can, as far as the form is concerned. You give up your wife, you give up your husband, money, house, motor cars, televisions, whatever. Give everything. Surrender everything. Renounce everything physically. And you get confirmation. You get 3-star heroism mark. Whatever your name might be, your orders might be called, whatever you involve in that kind of spiritual trip. That you are the fantastic person, great person, who had done such sacrifice, such surrendering, giving up everything, surrendering absolutely everything. And wouldn't he deserve? Yes, of course he deserves. And then when he deserves, he gets what he wants, and then he could still save. At the beginning you might think, I deserve a little corner for myself, just to try to be me. Or in order to surrender, I need a little corner for myself in order to surrender, in order to worship. And that little corner is not by no means a little corner at all. It's very tricky there. And that slowly and slowly, like a cancer, it grows and grows and grows. That little corner becomes a whole passport to heaven. And so finally we could save ourselves. It was close shave, but we managed to do it. We are talking about spiritual discipline in connection with what we've discussed already, the ironic game and the trick that we played on ourselves and onto our gurus, our society, our ashram, our zendo, whatever have you. That somehow or other that trick is not so much to attain enlightenment, which of course you would like to do, but that trick is that you would like to maintain yourself constantly. So actually, by giving physical wealth and disciplines and pleasures and all kinds, that we don't lose anything fundamentally. That we feel that we had an enormous invest and we put a lot of energy in existing and maintaining ourselves. That had become a problem. But the other approach, or the true approach of spirituality, is the opposite. Complete opposite. That giving lots of money, your family, your motor car, your whole livelihood into the church or the temple is not quite the point. That we have to give that thing what we have, which dear and close to ourselves, very close to our heart, In fact, we are not talking about close to heart itself, but we have to give it heart itself, which is asking a lot. And that's why the surrendering that we discussed in the tradition, the taking a refugee vow, that you become refugee finally, that you don't have any hold on to anything. You become stateless. You don't have a country that belongs to. Not only you give your possessions, but that's the question of surrendering here becomes important, that the final security is myself and me. I have given certain things and surrender myself, but still I didn't give I. You feel good, you perform charity, and so forth. So the question here involved is that we should give that up. We have to surrender this up. Well, you might say that supposing if I give this up, does that mean I should commit suicide? Or I should give up any kind of hope at all? If I give this up, I have nothing. Absolutely nothing. That what you mean by giving this the fundamental things up. If I gave this up, I can't enlightenment. If I gave this up, I can't be a student. I can't understand. I have nothing to work on. That's where the tricky part comes from. It's very tricky. Well, maybe certain teachers who hold the view of idiot compassion might say, calm yourself, my child. Don't worry, we still love you. Just to come along with us and join us. But is that the case to spirituality? This is very questionable, actually. Highly questionable. Something very suspicious about that. It's comparable that your parents are dying and they are going to die in 3 days' time. 3 days' time. And you are still afraid to tell them that you are going to die. You should prepare yourself. We love you very much. And you are going to die. In any case, I would like to break that news, because we do not want to extend our hypocrisy to that far. So, Mommy, you're going to die. Daddy, you're going to die. And you have cancer, and the doctor said, so we gave up hope on you, but you're going to last for 3 days. And such breaking the news is very difficult in our conventional society. We find that in fact practically nobody does that, except a few regarded as eccentric people or some strange people might do it. But ordinarily in the professional world one never does that. One never breaks that particular news, which is terrible, I think, in some sense. That death is the only way that to communicate to such a person who had already lived life, and somebody should relate with a dying person that's saying that you are going to die, actually. The death is taking place in you, that you should relate with it. Precisely exactly the same thing with spiritual teachers or spiritual friends as concerned, that also the spiritual friend should tell you that in fact, according to the wisdom that it developed and practice that it evolved, that enlightenment is attained in the past lineage, after lineage, after lineage. that in fact you are not going to attain enlightenment. You are going to die. If there's you who are going to attain enlightenment, it is absolutely not enlightenment. It is something else. It is you attaining egohood. So you can't attain enlightenment. As you as such cannot attain enlightenment at all. You are going to perish. You're going to die. You can't watch your burial. You don't have to put long faces. It's okay. Attainment of enlightenment at this point is related with that of giving up ego's territory. When the ego's territory is completely surrendered to no particular authority, no particular person, but basically simply surrendered, up to the level that we have nothing to surrender. Even the notion of surrendering itself has been surrendered. So the whole thing becomes absolutely simple, utterly simple, very direct and very simple. That only thing that you have a thing to work on is basic state of existence, body, mind, consciousness. Very simple. Things become extremely simple from that point of view. Notion of that simplicity only can come about in the practice of meditation, which is dealing with the first skandha, of the skandha of consciousness that we discussed early on. That before we start on the practice of meditation, we have to have some kind of ideas and understanding, not necessarily scholarly one as such, particularly, or not to the extent that evangelical one, that you be converted so you feel good about it, particularly. But we got to have some kind of idea what we're going to do, why we are practicing meditation, why on earth we meditate. Couldn't we do our carpentry work, paint pictures, hike, take a trip around the world? What's the difference between those and meditating? What is the differences? They're all practices of some kind, which are legitimate by itself, in its own merit. So why do we have to meditate? Why do we have to do it this at all? That question arises actually at the beginning. It is necessary to meditate because whatever we do otherwise are pure deception, that we are convincing ourselves otherwise that we can maintain territory of ego. That therefore, if we are on the spiritual path, you have to sit and meditate on your square cushion. I think I mean it. Pretty much so. That one has to do it. Actually, you got to do it. And you can't substitute from walking in the woods, swimming across the ocean, skydiving. Maybe those are meditative. Somewhat. I mean, one can use at least the analogy of it, but however, it is not quite powerful enough, quite honest enough, genuine enough. So therefore, we got to sit down with ourselves. As we generally say that I would like to have a word with you, or your parents usually say to your children that John, can you come to my study? I would like to have a word with you. Can we sit down sometime together and have a talk? And that's the kind of approach that we have got to sit down with ourselves and find out who we are, what we are, why we are, and so forth. To realize that the basic approach to our life has been very self-oriented and a territory-oriented one. That knowing that we cannot maintain our territory as far as spirituality is concerned, spiritual experience is concerned, we cannot hold our territory. So to begin with, that we have to learn to accept that particular thing. In some sense, it's analogous to communism, in a sense that when the communist controls your country, first thing they will ask you is land reform. That the rich people should give up their land and distribute it to the rest of the people. Giving up ground so that you can't wave your flag of richness or millionaireship, whatever. That you don't have any ground. Even if you have a ground, such ground is against you. You can't take pride attitude of what you have is the greatest thing what you have. But you had so much, therefore you are subject to condemnation. That since you collected so much, you have so much territory, it is not so good. Well, people have more territory, a lot of territory, ego expansion, are known to be successful men of the world. And people like us, who don't have territory, don't have properties, just simply surviving on food stamps, whatever, it feels good. At least we are free from those particular blame and accusations. But still, the question goes beyond that. We have to give fundamental territory, basic territory, complete territory, willing to give up hope to attain enlightenment. That's it. Willing to give up to attain enlightenment, even willing to give up to attain enlightenment, give up the whole thing. You give up your ego, supposedly, but if you try to give up the hope of attaining enlightenment, you haven't given up your ego completely. You still have some kind of hope somewhere there. In connection with that, in practice of meditation, the study of first skandha of consciousness is understanding such situations of giving up all kinds of ground, completely, finally, utterly. Then we begin to work with ourselves very humbly, extremely humbly. This is the practice of the refugees who become refugees by lost their citizenship, land, occupation, dignity, everything. Everything's been surrendered. That you don't even exist. You can't even say you barely exist. That in itself is questionable. So you don't exist. Anything existed that in the state of realm is your body, your breath, your mind. That is what we have. That the discipline of shamatha and vipassana teachings being recommended, prescribed, that this is necessary. The shamatha teaching brings us or helps us to simplify our life without ego tripping. That simply being related with our breath, body, mind. Very simply, absolutely directly. No problems of communicating with ourselves if you could simplify it up to that level, because you don't have any goal or project in mind, that it is simply surrendering and sitting on your meditation cushion. Lord Buddha had recommended, and since then, 2,500 years ago, millions of people have attained enlightenment by doing this and have achieved it unconsciously, of course. The enlightenment approached from your back door, and there's lineage of meditative discipline is active at this moment. It is happening right now, this very moment, that such experiences and traditions and information has been handed down by generation, had added new richness to this particular training process. Surrendering ego and the meditative practice, the contemplative traditions of this particular lineage has become extremely rich, become very personal to every one of them. So what we're talking here is a very real thing, quite a frighteningly real thing. Rather than something hypothetical, the possibilities and something that connected with the myth and the past. But we are talking something very real and direct. That the meeting point of the energies and the enlightenment of the lineage and our eagerness to surrendering our ego could meet together. It is highly possible. It had happened in the past as well. And it is possible present. And it is also possible in the future. It's real. As Coca-Cola advertisement would say. What we are doing here is that when we discuss about meditation, we are not talking about extending something further, but we are talking about undoing the ego. That we have developed as far as possible in the level of consciousness, and practice of meditation undoes consciousness by simplifying one's experience and working with the breathing, anapana, smriti, practice of meditation, in and out breath awareness takes place very simply, and that is undoing the consciousness. So at this point we could say quite safely that spiritual discipline is not so much of advancement, but at this point spiritual discipline is cautioning undoing what we have created already. And we have to unlearn and undo everything, step by step. Start with the fifth skandha, fourth, third, second, and first. We come back and back and back. That is the pattern of the path at this point. I think this point is very important. I want you to make note of this particular question. When we talk about spiritual advancement or development, we are not particularly talking about extending ourselves greater or becoming more and more professional of some kind of something or other, but we are talking about unlearning, undoing. And one of the problems that spiritual materialistic approach that consists here is that when we begin to learn more, add more tricks or trips of all kinds, more gadgets, it's like the American society has already enough gadgets, tricks. But when we begin to add more, it's seemingly fascinating and efficient to run our scene, household or domestic, office scene, business scene, whatever. But in the long run, it creates further chaos, creates more garbage. So that's precisely what we were talking about in terms of to beware of spiritual materialism is concerned, that is creating further garbage, that will create more tricks, more trips of all kinds of things. Some of them are fantastic, outlandish, and one often wonders who dreamt up such a thing. One feels dwarfed by such wisdom. But however, it's stuff, it's garbage, it's thing that we impose on us, which has nothing to do with unlearning, undoing, simplifying at all. We're piling up one cottage after cottage of cardboard boxes. We buy the stuff and we throw away the cardboard box, and finally our garage is completely filled with those boxes after boxes, with labels on them. So, from this point, quite sanely, quite practically, that it is necessary to think about ecology. It is more ecologically good, needless to say, I'm sure every one of you aware of ecology of some kind or other. It is ecologically good if you didn't collect more stuff, more garbage. It is better ecologically, we could say, we could still speak in the dualistic language, because that's the only our language there is. We could say it is good if you didn't collect. It would be bad and terrible that if we collect too many things, more than we can handle, as a matter of fact, that better not to cut out too many forms out of a magazine. And when you write a little form that will be advertised in a magazine, seems to be very simple, but what comes back to you is huge boxes of garbage. The basic practice of meditation, this point is a question of simplicity, unlearning, undoing. But again, we can't be 100% foolproof at this point even. In order to undo and unlearn, one has to do something. You see that the problems that we're facing here, that we are dealing with the samsaric world, in order to solve a problem, we have to create a problem. That's usually the case. So we're creating a problem, we're creating a spiritual materialism of one kind or another, which is very, at least harmless one. We could say, we could go as far as to that, very harmless, very simple. And it just die by itself, live by itself, which is a simple technique of practice of meditation that being prescribed by the Buddha on awareness of breath. And that tend to cut through the unnecessary thought chatter, subconscious gossip, and the mind's duplicity begin to cut down, not immediately, but because that your approach is so simple-minded. Just be with your breath, just be with your body, sit down and don't try to think anything else, but just sit and be with your breath. Let the breath be your thought. And such a simple-minded, simpleton approach, if you like to call it, is the only way that you get metaphysical questions, philosophical, mystical experiences of all kinds descending on you. But let them be, so what? Regard them as garbage. Not in the sense of looking down at them as being there, being terribly bad and threatening, impure. But seeing them as something unnecessary, further garbage. And that is the starting point in practice meditation, which is the beginning of undoing, dealing with the ego's territory. At least that there is the continual security that ego had created, which is a constant thought chatter, constant thought process, which will keep itself busy so you can regenerate yourself constantly. Your motor keep on going because you're being pouring all kinds of fuels of a conceptual mind at the same time. So if you don't pour more fuel, or if you don't go along with any one of them, so that at least the creativity of ego has been somewhat starved right at the beginner's point of view, of course. So that seems to be the starting point, or the basic attitude of practicing meditation is that boycotting ego, not as a villain, enemy, but give no fuel and let ego have energy crisis. And that seems to be the basic approach and the basic trick, so to speak, that Buddha had developed, and such attitude, such approach becomes still up to date. And we can even talk about the energy crisis. And it's always applicable, this point. We just touch barely the beginning of that process of the how to undo ego, how to unlearn with the ego's doctrine. I think probably we should discuss more in the coming discussions and talks that we're going to have. I would like to inject this particular process. I would like to follow up this. We have to talk about the Mahayana and Vajrayana, take a look at glimpse in Vajrayana and so forth. We're going to discuss and get into the next sessions that we have. That suddenly I realized that our course is halfway through, which doesn't give me enough chance and time to go through the whole thing, which I wished in the beginning. But I think if we try to rush, try to include a lot of materials in this particular course, that's going to confuse you enormously. And you won't get anything out of it. So I would like to stick to some basic point of the traditional approach and basic disciplines, such as like undoing of ego and practice meditation and things like that, so we could go methodically, step by step. And I think I shouldn't talk too much at this point tonight. And if you'd like to ask questions, you're welcome.
Rinpoche, if one is to have no projects while on the meditation cushion, where and how does one relate to the 5 skandhas and make the connection with the practice of meditation?
Well, you don't have to relate with a particular, you are already 5 skandha yourself. And what we are doing is as an informational piece, that we're dealing with the first skandha. at the beginner's level of sitting practice meditation. And when we begin to do the anapanasmriti practice, that is the beginning practice of meditation. But one doesn't have to think in terms of strategy of which skandha you are enriched with particularly at all. You just do it as you are, because all the 5 skandhas are functioning at once in your system, in any case.
How is it that you express a fear, saying that it's fearful to let the ego die, when at that point there is no one dying?
Sorry, I didn't follow quite.
You seem to repeatedly say that it's a fearful or horrific experience at the death of the ego. At that point, would there not be no one to experience that fear?
Fearful? Can you just say it once more, third time?
How is it that the emotion of fear or feeling of fear is connected with the death of the ego?
Fear?
No, isn't that what you said? That it was fearful?
Well, I think question of fear is that there is a sense of the journey is very fearful because it demands something more than you expected. And originally what you thought was that if you give your capital to the church in income and give your house, give your motor cars and give your color television, and then the whole problem might be solved, that one feels secured. But somehow this doesn't become quite enough. There is further fear that you haven't given up anything at all, and things that be demanded for you to give is unreasonable one. That if somebody is asking you to give your ego, that's very unreasonable. It's unheard of and never known in the business world in the world. It's very powerful and very demanding. And also the fear of attaining enlightenment, that you can't tame yourself, that you can't watch your funeral ground, funeral service, burial service, which is also disheartening, because you would like to celebrate that finally you've made it. Invite your parents and your fathers and your mothers, whatever, and create a good bar mitzvah out of that. And it is not possible. So it seems that the path is filled with uncertainty and the fear and the confusion at that point. And at the same time, if you take the attitude of this, you have nothing to lose because you have nothing to gain at the same time. So one begins to inspire to celebrate. And that might be the occasional thought, occasional experience, occasional glimpse rather than an ongoing thing, but still that realizing that you have nothing to lose, nothing to gain, so you begin to evolve yourself in a different frame of thinking, which might be also fearful at the same time. It's endless, onion skin. Gentlemen over there.
Rinpoche, could you give us maybe a list or an analysis of what you see are the most prevalent forms of cardboard boxes or forms of spiritual materialism, and maybe the most subtle and hard ones to see that are being practiced and built by these people, by us here and now?
Do you mean one of the what the...
You talked about cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
What, in terms of the people that are here right now studying,
Well,
what do
I
you
think-
see are the most...
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's a question of collections of all kinds have been made. All kinds of collections that we have made. And in fact, if we didn't make such collections, we wouldn't be here. And this gathering is collections of all kinds of background and all kinds of experiences at the same time. But however, I can't speak for everyone. I would like to speak for individuals that you have experienced your own style of collection and somebody else experiences their own style of collection. But some of the collections may be worthwhile and egoless surrendering attempt that you made, which is very genuine and beautiful. And some of the collections are very aggressive one because you want to get something out of it. And I think it's difficult to speak for everybody, but there are a lot of collections of that, very personal collections. Some people like to collect junk, some people like to collect antiques, some people like to collect stamps, and people have a neurotic tendency to be fascinated by certain particular style of all kinds. Gentleman in blue shirt with the mala.
At the last meeting, you said that basic bewilderment was of the nature of enlightenment.
Can you repeat that again?
At our last meeting, you said that basic bewilderment had the nature of enlightenment, or that enlightenment had the nature of basic bewilderment. Could you say something more about that? I don't understand.
Well, I think it's a question of uncertainty. And it is a question of that there might be something that's taking place, but you can't quite point your finger to it. And the basic bewilderment is also expression of existence as well as non-existence at the same time. It is expression of existence because that you feel you can trick yourself out of the basic bewilderment and establish your home ground out of that. And it is at the same time expression of non-existence or egolessness because that you be fundamentally haunted by your existence, which is non-existence at the same time. And that notion of non-existence and sense of being haunted constantly by enlightenment doesn't feel particularly good at the beginning. It is somewhat bothersome that we try to shake off constantly. And that particular attempt trying to shake off enlightened attitude of non-existence ego is the continual occupation of ego that has been taking place all the time. Whenever there's a gap, whenever there's possibilities, you try to seal off. And whatever you want to do, entertain yourself by something else, or aggressively push it out, or trying to put something else in and fill the space. So that has become our problem. So there is a very powerful enlightened mind is operating constantly all the time, which according to Buddhist tradition it is called the Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha.
You talked before about the difference between meditating and hiking in the mountains. What is the difference?
I beg your pardon?
You talked about before the difference between meditation, sitting on the pillow, and hiking in the mountains. What is the difference?
What's the difference between what?
Between hiking and meditating.
Between what? Enlightenment?
Hiking and meditating.
What are the differences between meditation and hiking?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite obvious. I hope it is to you. Hiking is hiking, and meditating is meditating. You have a different kind of concept involved.
Once we have that sense of basic bewilderment, and you might feel it's pretty strong, then the methods that we do, no matter what particular form that method takes, is really filled with that bewilderment. And so, is it that one method might be more efficacious in getting into that bewilderment or increasing its power of the bewilderment, or are all methods,
Sir, I wouldn't try to split hair. I wouldn't try to split hair. Hair? I wouldn't try to split. I wouldn't. And once you begin to analyze all kinds of things, and there's all kinds of problems and details that even the most accomplished analyst of great pundits couldn't handle it, because there are so many of them. Not only that, but they are so accurate, and at the same time they are so inaccurate at the same time. So I don't think I can answer that question, and I have to leave it up to you, that you can handle it yourself. And the only way you can handle that situation is by not analyzing it, but have an open eye to it and experience it and then somehow experience will bring about some kind of process, some kind of alternative, if you like to call it, is usually happens. Thank you.
Could you explain more fully what you meant by getting enlightened unconsciously or through the back door? And could you relate that to the process of meditation?
Enlightenment?
You spoke of getting enlightened unconsciously or getting enlightened through the back door. I didn't really understand that.
Well, I think that's it, actually. That you can't understand it. But that doesn't mean to say that everything had to be, woolly and vague, particularly. But attainment of enlightenment, or enlightenment coming from back door, is that you are involved with the practice of meditation diligently, and one should not ask questions about enlightenment or attainment of anything. And there is a sense of openness takes place. Which happens, and particularly at the level when you have a very poor opinion of yourself. And usually experience takes place when you feel utterly down and depressed and angry with everybody. You feel not so good, and something's taking place there because you're experiencing loss of your territory at that point. That is the back door. Good luck, sir.
We study the teachings of spiritual materialism, but it seems that the ego can even get involved in that and say, well, gee, now I really know what the spiritual path is because, now I know it's not I'm seeing it's not supposed to be a spiritual materialistic trip, but the ego gets involved in that. And the ego seems to get involved in everything, and it begins to seem hopeless.
Well, I think that's a good question. But I think the basic point there is that there is a sense of you might get some sense of trick and discipline and a certain sense of technique that you might associate yourself with. But those methods and means does not become important unless you yourself get into the practice already. So I think that's why the practice is very important. Because once you begin to practice, your schemizing, clever mind fall apart completely. You don't know who you are, what you are. You lost your strategy completely. If you set constantly, like a retreat situation, say 10 days, that your scheme is completely distorted, and you have no scheme, and you have no idea who you are, what you are, and you have even no chance of regrouping. And I think the practice, therefore, it is extremely important. Even 3 hours a day practice such things like that is extremely important, because that begin to bring you about a sense of bewilderment from the point of view of that there's no time to scheme, or even you might have schemed something about. It does not become effective, that there is kind of chaos is set into the whole process. Lady the wall.
I have a two-part question. The first part is that I find meditation very boring and irritating. That isn't really a question, that's a statement, but maybe you could comment on that. The question part of it is, how does meditation differ from introspection plus breathing?
Did you say reading?
Breathing.
No, reading.
Introspection plus breathing. How is that different from meditation?
Well, that's not meditation, I think. The meditation simply means you should sit, do nothing. In a certain particular fashion, straighten your back and work with your breath and follow the discipline. It's very simple. And we are not talking particularly in terms of meditation as a contemplative Gesundheit. We are not talking meditation in terms of light touch to reality, how we could glide in the midair. But we are talking meditation in terms of serious work, actual work, and putting our effort and energy and save our time properly, definitely, precisely, and doing it wholeheartedly. But the meditation and action part is maybe somewhat fuzzy. But that can only develop after you have done a serious sitting practice, serious disciplinary work, which doesn't mean to say that you have to give up your job and go into a monastery or nunnery to become good meditation practitioners, particularly, but one can discipline oneself in the everyday life situation, as well as keeping your 9-to-5 jobs, whatever you have. It is possible. When we talk about meditation here, it is very special, very specific, and very direct, and you sit on your cushion and you do it. And if you have a attempt to listen to music and sit, if you have attempted to sit in a sunbathe in your front lawn, thinking that is part of meditation, or go to Acapulco and swim, or whatever you think you are doing, skydiving, we've discussed before, those things, it is not regarded as a meditation. I mean, I'm taking this particular approach. It's very orthodox, very direct, and very simple. So we have so many problems involved with the complications. So we try to simplify things. And sitting practice of meditation is the only way to get your head together, if you like to call it, or foot together, whatever. And one got to do it, one got to sit and actually do it. One had to follow this particular technique, one had to follow this particular discipline. There's no other way. You can't philosophize. And that doesn't mean to say that life is denied as anti-meditation particularly. But you can work with the meditative and action situations. Once you have certain experience and a certain discipline actually involved, and you can handle yourself along those 3 hours of sitting stretch, 10 hours sitting stretch, once you have experience with yourself properly and precisely, you can do it, then you can start a meditation action. But I would recommend not experiment with any other things before you have any discipline involved. Good luck, madam. I think we have to end our meeting point at this particular time. There is sitting practice is timed, scheduled. Again, the intense situation is being planned. So I would like to encourage anybody who are interested in actually trying to find out what sitting practice, what becoming refugee, and what does it mean by actually practicing sitting. I would like to and recommend everybody very strongly. And please think about that, and I hope you could keep a certain space in your day that you could sit and practice those given situations that sitting practice is going to be organized here in the whole day long intense situations which are taking place, I think, in the Sunday, coming Sunday. Is that the case? It is. So I would like to recommend heavy handling and invite very happily. So please think about that. And if we try to understand what we are talking about at all, I think we have to do some work rather than just listening, which is not regarded as a work at this point. So I would like to invite every one of you, if you can, please think about that situation. I think which makes our relationship and learning situation becomes much easier. That then you have at least some ideas as to what we are talking about, what we are doing. And you have an understanding of the 5 skandhas and some understanding of what you are, what you're doing, and what is the techniques and teachings and this particular discipline is all about. It is absolutely necessary. So I would like to remind you again tonight. And, thank you.